Welcome to the Anime Audiophile Podcast. Please like and subscribe for more. Thank you. Kakashi Hiden, Lightning in the Icy Sky. Chapter 13. Stairway to Heaven. Kakashi held Kahayo to his chest to hide the sight of Regio plummeting from the Tobishakimaru. She beat at that chest in rage and grief over losing her brother. She buried her face in Kakashi's arms and wept freely. Even after Kahayo's wailing turned to sobbing, Kakashi kept holding her to him. And then he said the thing that he had no choice but to say. I don't want to say this at a time like this, but the Tobishakimaru seems to be gradually ascending. If we keep going, we're all going to die. He got no response. There are lives that can still be saved on this ship, Kakashi said, gently, as though trying to comfort a small child. I don't know how well it'll go, but I intend to do whatever I can. Face still buried in his chest, Kahayo murmured, What will you do? Put a hole in the air bladder. Kahayo was silent. The old man who built this ship said that they used helium for buoyancy, which isn't flammable. So even if there is a fire, there won't be any big explosion or anything. If I can puncture the air bladder, we might be able to bring Tobishakimaru down for a landing. And if it doesn't go well? Have you ever stuck a needle in a fully blown-up balloon? She breathed a tiny sigh. It's my first time breaking a balloon this enormous. Kakashi stopped abruptly, and Kahayo lifted a face swollen with tears. What's wrong? He lifted a hand to forestall her question. What? Sorry, I can't hear you that well. You secured Garyo? We've taken care of it. Ino's voice sounded softly inside his head. Shikamaru and the others are still chasing the escaped prisoners, though. I've just had a message from Lady Tsunade that Sachikage is heading your way. We can see him from here as well. Kakashi looked out at the sea of gray clouds swirling below his eyes through the gash in the gondola. 3 shining bodies were approaching them at incredible speed. I can see them too, Kakashi replied in his head. They're going to shoot the Tobishakimaru down before it enters Ishigakure. In which case, making a hole in the air bladder would have exactly the wrong effect. Looking down on Oki and the others closing in on them, he began racking his brain urgently. The air leaking out from the hole will propel the ship. No, if I make the hole in the front of the air bladder, the force will work in the opposite direction and push the ship back, won't it? The wind toyed with Kahayo's long curls, and Kakashi realized once more that the wind was blowing from east to west. That's no good. If I make a hole in the front of the air bladder... He rethought the situation. The Tobishakimaru would end up going against the wind. If he handled it poorly, they would be thrown about by the air currents. And if that happens, then we'll be battered every which way and be bouncing around inside the ship long after we're dead. Like we got sucked into a washing machine or something. The points of light slowed down and then stopped below them. He thought it strange only for an instant. He quickly grasped the reason behind them stopping. The ship had gone beyond the range within which the Sachikage could fly and was still ascending further. Don't let them shoot this ship down. Yes, that won't happen. What? Please listen closely, Master Kakashi, Ino said. This is an order from Lady Tsunade. Please blow up the Tobishakimaru immediately. Hold on a minute. There are still survivors on this ship. I understand, Ino said, without a hint of emotion before disconnecting the transmission. And Lady Tsunade understands this as well. Kakashi's eyes raced over to the people crouched down in the kitchen. Several had already collapsed and were greedily sucking at the thinning air, their mouths wide open. With the sudden temperature drop, all of them were shivering furiously. How high up are we right now? Good question. A pilot holding her knees on the floor lifted her face and moved purple lips. I don't have my gauges, so I can't say for sure, but given how thin this air is, I think we're long past 13,000 meters. 13,000. Kakashi did some mental calculations. It hadn't yet been 10 minutes since Tobishakimaru had been torn apart. They had originally been flying at an altitude of 5,000 meters, but in the confusion earlier, they had to have gone higher than that. Assuming they had risen to 7,000 meters at that time, that meant they had ascended another 6,000 meters in the span of 10 minutes. 6,000 meters in 10 minutes. In other words, if they continued to ascend at this speed, in another 10 minutes, the ship would reach an altitude of 19,000 meters. And their blood would boil in their bodies. No, that's not going to happen, Kakashi thought, desperately. Before that, the air bladder will probably explode because of the pressure differential. In which case, it might be better to deliberately break the air bladder and lower our altitude. At the very least, we won't have to deal with something unexpected when the air bladder explodes abruptly. But if I pop the air bladder in these air currents, will I be able to maintain control of Tobishakimaru? What's that point of light? Kaio's voice did not reach Kakashi at all. When she repeated the question, he finally returned to himself. The Tsuchikage of Ishigakure, he managed to reply. He knows this ship is jammed with blue fire powder, and he plans to shoot it down before it enters Ishigakure. And not only that. The order I just got from Konoha. I have to blow this ship up. What? Kaio cried. There are still passengers aboard. Kakashi lowered his gaze in anguish. I'm sorry. This is all our fault. I'm a shinobi. I'm prepared for death. But the people riding on this ship, I'm sure they expected nothing more than a great deal of fun on a sightseeing trip. I can't believe it's come to this. Kaio bit her lip. Sorry, Kakashi continued. I wasn't trying to reproach you. No, Kaio shook her head. It's only natural that you would. I've got nothing else up my sleeve. We just have to land the ship before we leave Kusagakure, right? A do-or-die look colored Kaio's face. In that case, let's destroy the air bladder. We can't. Now it was Kakashi's turn to shake his head. We make a hole in the air bladder, and the ship will be buffeted every which way. I didn't say let's make a hole in it. Kakashi let his confused expression speak for him. I said, let's destroy the air bladder. He narrowed his eyes. We have no choice. We have to chance it, Kaio said, large eyes shining with resolve. I don't want anyone else to die. Infinity, just as he had been instructed by Kaio, Kakashi headed toward the back of the ship, crossing the suspended scaffolding to make his way to the drive area he had used when he snuck on board in the first place. The pilot house had fallen away with much of the passenger gondola, so the propellers had stopped turning. He climbed the ladder and stepped out onto the scaffolding used by the crew during maintenance inspections. From there, the air bladder was so close he could touch it. They had no choice. If the Tobishakimaru kept ascending, everyone would die anyway. No, before that happened, the instant the wind carried them out of Kusagakure airspace, they'd face the Tsuchikage's attack. Or maybe flickering tongues of fire would spread all over and roast them all when the air bladder was damaged. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, the passengers had already been evacuated to the ship's storehouse. After taking a deep breath, Kakashi let out a battle cry and flung his chakra-infused kunai at the air bladder. Skrink! The blade pierced the bladder, scattering sparks. A tiny crackling noise hit his ears, followed by helium forcefully jetting out. And then, of course, the thing he had feared happened. At first, it was a small red flame. A mere 10 seconds later, it had burned up the back of the air bladder. Whoosh! The external skin of the air bladder went up in flames all at once, the blaze howling as it sucked in air. In the blink of an eye, it had spread to the entire envelope area. At the same time, the Tobishakimaru turned its nose toward the ground and started to fall. Kakashi leapt down the ladder and raced back across the scaffolding. Above his head, flames licked at the air bladder, and it gradually disappeared, as though God were taking an eraser to it, leaving nothing but the skeleton behind. They began to lose altitude. When he flew into the kitchen, Kakashi had already finished weaving her signs and activated her jutsu. Ice style. Earth chain ice. Her voice was drowned out by the wind, but her jutsu was not. An enormous collision shuddered through the falling ship. The Tobishakumaru sprang upward, followed by Kakashi dropping onto the flat slab she had made with the earth chain ice. The impact knocked yet another piece of the gondola off. Kakashi, still weaving signs, concentrated on her jutsu with a grim look on her face. The physical and mental burden was no doubt heavy. Her arms trembled, her hair stood on end, and a trail of blood came from the corner of tightly pursed lips. The chakra-cloaked ice surface gradually extended outward, as if it were growing up from the bottom of the ship, and the Tobishakumaru plunged its head into the sea of clouds, which parted and swallowed it up. Each time air currents threatened to snatch up the ship, tentacles of ice forced it back on course. "We'll land it." Kakashi pushed the words through clenched teeth. "I absolutely will not fail." They were wrapped in a single shade of gray as they passed through the clouds. They could see nothing. Their descent was so rapid, Kakashi's ears popped repeatedly from the changes in air pressure. Swallowing hard, he released the air blocking his ears, and the sound of the wind became clear again. In less than a minute, the air bladder had become essentially nothing more than its own frame. The structure left behind was black and smoking. As if insisting there was still more for the conflagration to consume, the flames pressed ever forward. Above the heads of Kakashi and Kakashi were only the blue of the flames and the gray of the clouds. Tobishakumaru broke through the clouds and continued its fall. It heaved from side to side, but each time, Kakashi created a wall of sorts with her icicles and kept the ship from sliding off the slab of ice. The badly damaged ship steadily lost altitude. And then Kakashi felt his body floating up gently. He was indeed floating in midair. "What's happening?" "There's not enough water." Kakashi shouted back. "There's not enough moisture in the air for me to make ice." Peeking down through the broken kitchen floor, he saw that the slab of ice Tobishakumaru had been riding on had disappeared without a trace. The yellow earth spread out in the distance below them, the mountains in full autumn foliage, the river glinting and glittering as it flowed. Having lost its ice support, Tobishakumaru was falling more or less straight down. He knew that they had broken 5,000 meters when he saw that Sachikage flying up as though he had been waiting impatiently. "Oi, Kakashi!" Anoki came alongside the Tobishakumaru, flanked by Kuratsuchi and Akatsuchi. "Seems this is the end of the ride. If it's just you two, we can save you." "Woman, Kakashi, jump over." Kakashi and Kakashi exchanged glances. Kakashi nodded. That was all. With that, Kakashi knew she was of the same mind as he was. "What are you doing?" "You don't hurry it up, we'll have no choice to shoot you down with the ship," but Kakashi didn't have the leisure time to let the Sachikage finish speaking. A surprised "ah" slipped out Kakashi's mouth. Almost as if he were about to charge the Sachikage, Kakashi kicked at the broken floorboards and leapt out of the ship. His body danced in the air. There was nothing but a few thousand meters of empty space between him and the ground. The wind ran fingers through his silver hair, and a hard determination like ice took up residence in his eyes. "Good. Come." But Kakashi leapt over the reeling Anoki, kicked at Akatsuchi's head, and jumped even farther. What are you doing?" "Kakashi!" Kakashi shouted, not to be outdone by the Sachikage. Kakashi concentrated the chakra of his entire body into his right arm. "I am going to make it rain." "Kakashi!" "The rest is up to you, Kakashi." Pulling his right arm, shining dazzlingly white-hot, far back, Kakashi beat at the rain clouds with every bit of violet bolt he could muster up. Yeah. Kaboom! At the incredible force, the clouds split, and for a moment, they caught a glimpse of blue sky. The force was such that Kakashi himself was almost sent flying by his own jutsu. The Sachikage opened his eyes wide in surprise. The lightning gushing out from every inch of Kakashi's body shot out in all directions and pierced the gray clouds. Instantly, lightning called lightning. The rain clouds pulled together, electricity rippling through them. "It's too dangerous, Lord Sachikage," Akatsuchi cried. "Hurry! Hide yourself in my shadow. I don't need you to take care of me," Anoki roared. Honestly, those Konoha ninjas, they go to absurd lengths. A bolt of lightning flashed out of clouds rumbling with angry thunder and split a large maple tree on the ground cleanly in two. "Kuratsuchi, help that idiot." Obeying the Sachikage's orders, Kuratsuchi immediately went chasing after an unconscious, falling Kakashi. The first drop of rain hit her cheek. It felt like he had been unconscious for hours, but Kakashi had only lost consciousness mere seconds earlier. At the touch of the cool rain on his face, he lifted his eyelids slightly. The instant he did, a massive shadow jumped in front of his eyes. Startled, his eyelids snapped open, and Kakashi took in the figure of Kaio desperately weaving signs inside the broken gondola. The falling rain was called into her earth chain ice and formed into ice crystals on the bottom of the Tobishakimaru, which itself was nothing more than wreckage now. The ice crystals stretching out from the bottom of the ship gradually grew into a silver platform that glittered in the sky. And the Tobishakimaru glided along on top of it. As soon as the ship had slid past it, the ice broke apart and danced off into space, glittering brightly. It looked almost as though the ship had become a comet. If there were such a thing as a stairway to heaven. The thought came unbidden to Kakashi's mind as he watched the airship sliding downward, rumbling and roaring. It would definitely be something like this. Bluish-white ice crystals drifted soundlessly, filling the sky. "Looks like he's awake." He heard a voice near his ear. "What should I do, Pops?" Kakashi was being carried on Kuratsuchi's shoulders. "That boy was pretty serious about dying, it seems," that Sachikage said. "Got his reasons, I suppose. And that troublesome ship's not falling into our land, it seems. So we've got no business here now." "Oh!" Akatsuchi cried out, wildly. "Something's flying up from Ozuki Castle." Sai silently brought his large bird up alongside Kuratsuchi. When the Sachikage nodded, Kuratsuchi tossed Kakashi over to the bird's back with a hop. "Tell Princess Tsunade not to grow complacent in her victory. It's getting to be time for us to hand things over to the next generation, after all." Leaving these words behind, Anoki flew off. At that moment, for the first time, Kakashi realized they were getting quite close to the ground. He could see people squirming around like ants in the courtyard of Ozuki Castle, plumes of white smoke snaking up around them. The Tobishakimaru slid down into the broad grassy plains surrounding the castle. In the field, the season for ground cherries passed, thick clouds of dust danced up. The ship skidded across the grass, pitched forward, and stopped. There was a commotion from the direction of the castle, and soon enough, a small figure came flying out of the gates and raced toward the Tobishakimaru. It was Sakura. A pitched battle on the south side of the castle caught his attention. A whirlwind sprang to life and pulled the fleeing prisoners into it. It had to be Lee's Konoha whirlwind. Meanwhile, the shadows stretching out and shrinking back in the courtyard told him that Shikamaru was holding firm there. A large ball beyond the courtyard mowed prisoners down, Choji's human juggernaut. And the two figures he spied tearing along the straight path from the castle were definitely Tsunade and Shizune. Shino's insects, Tenden's ninja tools, Kiba and Akamiru, looking out at his comrades, Kakashi could do nothing to stop the heat that welled up in his heart. Just like the Sachikage said, "It's our time to start on this path." It was then that a decisive change came over Kakashi. Haven't I just been using the loss of the Sharingan as an excuse to run away from the position of Hokage? He thought, abruptly. Becoming Hokage means there are more people I need to protect. Which means I don't know when or where I'll have to face the same sadness as when I lost Obito. I was so convinced I wasn't ready to carry the burden of that sadness. The people of this land, right now, even in this very moment, say nothing and support each other. They act like it's the most natural thing in the world, the same way they wake up when morning comes. Naruto, Lady Tsunade, Shikamaru, Ino, Guy, Lee, Tenten, Choji, Sakura, Sai, Hinata, Shizune, Irika, Shino, Kiba, all of their faces came to life in Kakashi's heart one after another. And from the bottom of that heart, he was proud of Konoha, of these comrades. If those guys need me to, Kakashi thought, I'll gather up all of their sadness and take it into myself. Right, like it's the most natural thing. And I'll struggle together with them in that sadness. That's what it means to be Hokage. Chapter 14. First Order. The rain finally stopped, and the dark clouds were swept away on the wind. The chaos at Hozuki Castle began to settle, for the moment at least. The fires inside the castle were extinguished, and the prisoners who continued to try to escape with admirable persistence were gradually rounded up by the Anbu. The wind gusted through the dry winter field, and the ninja of Konoha cautiously, carefully surrounded the remains of the Tobishakimaru, now on its side on the ground. The air bladder envelope had been completely burned away. The skeletal frame supporting it had been smashed and scattered in the impact of the landing. Wood chips scattered and fell whenever a gust blew through the passenger gondola, which looked as though it had been ripped apart by a giant hand. When the first human figure staggered out from the broken side, Tsunade's roar echoed across the plain. Put both hands up and come out slowly. Taking that as their signal, Kiba, Choji, Shino, Lee, and Tenten carefully approached the ship. They couldn't say with certainty that the enemy wasn't mixed in with the passengers. Sai was standing by in the sky above. Are you all right? Sakura alone raced around among the passengers to check if they had sustained any injuries. Is anyone injured? One after another, exhausted and haggard, the passengers came out of the ship. Many of them looked up at the sky in amazement, walking slowly, as if confirming that they were no longer trapped in that deadly sky with every step they took. Some of them collapsed the moment they set foot on solid ground. When Tsunade nodded, the shinobi wrapped the passengers in blankets and gave them water. Sakura went around to treat those people who had broken bones or who were bleeding after the fall. Don't move. Tsunade's eyes were squarely upon Kahayo. The ninja of Konoha immediately took up battle postures. But Kahayo simply stood silently, motionless next to the damaged ship. Her large, bewildered eyes seemed to be searching for something as the wind played with her long, curly hair. You are Kahayo of the Ryua Armed Alliance? Named by Tsunade, Kahayo nodded slightly. Do any of your comrades remain on board the ship? Kahayo slowly shook her head. No one could say whether that was an answer to Tsunade's question, whether it meant she didn't know, or if she was giving up and saying that none of that mattered anymore. You've done something quite outrageous. Because of you and your group, trust in Konoha has plummeted. Kahayo maintained her silence. The land of waves has also completely abandoned the development of airships, Tsunade said, a barely contained hiss. Did you think you could simply walk away from this? A gleam rose up in Kahayo's eyes, a readiness to fight, and she nodded. Get her out of here. Tsunade waved an arm and loosed her command. Seize her and lock her up in prison until we get answers. Please wait a moment, Lady Tsunade. At the sound of this voice, Tsunade and all the other shinobi turned around together. An expression mixing surprise and relief colored Kahayo's face red. There, leaning heavily on Shikamaru's shoulder, was Kakashi. Kakashi! Tsunade cried. Are you all right? Lady Tsunade. He pulled himself away from Shikamaru and stood upright. Will you leave dealing with Kahayo to me, please? What? Tsunade met his eyes briefly. Do you have an idea? But rather than replying, Kakashi turned to face Kahayo. A breeze blew between them, kicking up an indescribable bittersweet sadness in him. Until just a minute ago, we were up there, huh? He said, turning his head back up to the open and infinite sky. From between the remaining clouds painting the sky, a weak light had begun to shine through. It's amazing we made it out alive. He brought his gaze back to Kaio. But not everyone was as lucky as we are. Kaio lowered her eyes. 18 of the 57 passengers are dead, Kakashi continued. And your comrades as well, other than you and the pair I locked up in the pantry, they're all dead. Do you have anything to say about that? Kaio bit her lip and shook her head. Kaio. Yes. I'll announce your punishment, then. As a ringleader in the attack on Tobishakimaru, you, error. A voice from behind interrupted Kakashi. Can I say something? When he looked back, a woman was standing there holding a child's hand. He narrowed his eyes. I'm the one you saved then. The woman bowed her head at Kaio. You released myself and my son, who was having an asthma attack, from that ship. Thanks to you, he was able to recover from the attack. I don't forgive you and your group for what you have done. She glanced over at Kakashi. But I wanted to at least say a word of thanks. Thank you so much. Kaio lowered her eyes, her face was twisted in anguish. The boy, now quite well, let go of his mother's hand and started running. Racing over to Kaio, he looked up at her and smiled. Thanks, Auntie. Surprise flitted across her face. I was really scared. And then he added suddenly in a small voice, but it was kind of fun too. As she watched the boy jog back over to his mother, Kaio's eyes filled with tears. Kaio, Kakashi called. As the ringleader of the attack on Tobishakimaru, you must die. So many were sacrificed. This is the only fitting punishment. Yes. Kaio's voice was shaking, but it held a note of readiness to accept whatever came at her. I humbly accept any punishment. However, if you can prove that you are a person who could be useful to the 5 great ninja nations, I will reduce the sentence you face and make it life in prison. What do you mean? From where I sit, your earth chain ice looks pretty useful. She stared at him. What are you talking about, Kakashi? Tsunade. What on earth could you use her ninjutsu for? Lady Tsunade. Kakashi looked over at her. When it is cast on ordinary people, her earth chain ice freezes them instantly. But ninja who can mold chakra can send that chakra around their bodies to generate heat and prevent their bodies from freezing. So if you're hit with earth chain ice, you have to always be molding your chakra. In other words, the prisoners wouldn't be able to use it to escape. What do you think? Right now, there's no castle master at Hozuki Castle really guarding the prisoners. I think she's ideally suited to the role. I see. It was Shikamaru who replied. The previous Master Mui did use his celestial prison to ensure that prisoners would spontaneously combust if they molded their chakra. This woman's earth chain ice would be as effective, but in the opposite way. Lady Tsunade, I think she might work. All the villages are exhausted from the 4th Great Ninja War. Labor is short everywhere, so if we released everyone from this infinitely tiresome job of supervising the prison, maybe the esteem Konoha is held in would rise. And it would make a good example. Example? Tsunade said. What sort of example? Well, it's the ultimate justice for Garyo. You know how he advocates controlling personal freedom? Shikamaru shrugged lightly. In that case, we'll just have this woman who believed in his way of thinking being in control of his freedom. Tsunade carefully thought the idea through before nodding slightly. I leave this matter to you, Kakashi. Thank you, Lady Tsunade. But do the inauguration ceremony. He stared down at his feet. This is your first job as the 6th Hokage. Tsunade grinned. You can't possibly intend to refuse? Kakashi met her eyes squarely and nodded firmly. He then turned back to Kaio. You said on the ship that the side with power is always the side that's right. If you become the master of Hozuki Castle, you'll be the one who's right. Show me your justice. She merely looked at him, stunned. You will do it, right? Yes. Tears streamed from Kaio's eyes. Hot tears that most certainly did not turn to ice as they rolled down her cheeks. Teach, thank you. Thank you. Well then, I declare it as the 6th Hokage. His voice rang out. Kaio, you are now in custody of Hozuki Castle. The term is indefinite. At the same time as you reflect on your own actions, you will supervise the prisoners and work each day to ensure that not a single one escapes. Tsunade nodded, while the ninja looked at their new Hokage with pride. I'm not worried. Kakashi's gaze softened abruptly. You are someone who understands the pain of others. I will devote myself to meeting your expectations. Kaio wiped away her tears. If I can be of some use to you, Lord Kakashi, I will do whatever I can. Kakashi. Tsunade slipped a Hiyori coat over his shoulders. Looks very good on you. Kakashi twisted his neck to look at his own back. 6th Hokage, he pulled the profoundly weighty Hiyori shut. Behind him, gentle smiles popped up on the faces of his fellow villagers. A soft breeze blew through the burnt-out husk of the Tobishakimaru. Prologue, Dear 6th Hokage. In the forest west of the village, Kakashi sat down at the base of an enormous maple tree. It was warm for March, and the sunlight pouring down from the leafy treetops above his head was enough to make him sweat. He pulled a letter from his breast pocket. The instant he opened the envelope, a faint, lovely scent wafted up to his nose, calling to mind that incident 4 months earlier, the day the Ryua Armed Alliance attacked the Tobishakimaru. He was a little amused by the coincidence. Only the day before, the 5 Kages had concluded a formal agreement regarding the management of Hozuki Castle. After the crash landing and prisoner roundup, the Tsuchikage, Mizukage, Kazekage, and Raikage had gone to observe the castle. The Raikage said he wanted to see Kaio's true power with his own eyes and had gone so far as to challenge her. According to the people there to witness the scene, not only did the Raikage's iron fists dig out several new holes in the wall of the castle, but in a display unsuited to his age, he had even launched his lariat. Naturally, no one thought the Raikage was putting his full strength into the fight. But even assuming he was only using half his strength, everyone to a person said that no ordinary ninja could fight as gracefully as Kaio had. She dodged the Raikage's attacks and dove at her opponent. And then, before the Raikage's face, she snapped her fingers. That was all. The Raikage's beard froze. Whoa, what? When did you, excuse me, Lord Raikage? Kaio smiled brightly before the Raikage's wide-open eyes. I've ruined your wonderful beard. The contest ended with no injury to either, although Raikage did lose the beard he was so proud of and was mercilessly laughed at behind closed doors by the people of Kumagakure. The other Kages were entertained by the incident. I can just see the face of that spoiled brat, like a pigeon taking a shot from a pea shooter, the Tsuchikage said. Or perhaps he didn't. At any rate, after close scrutiny with their own eyes, the other Kages reached their conclusion. Kaio's abilities were on par with those of her predecessor, Mui of Kusagakure, and given that there was no one as suited to becoming the new master of Hozuki Castle, they all supported the 6th Hokage's command. Kakashi opened the letter folded in 4. Dear 6th Hokage, I hope you have been well. All right. Echoing out from within the woods was Guy's loud, stifling voice. Today, we go again full throttle with youth power, Lee. Yes, Master Guy. And then, pushed in his wheelchair by Lee, FWSH, he went back and forth several times. What's this? Guy made a show of his surprise. Why, if it isn't the 6th Hokage Hatake Kakashi sitting there. Kakashi cringed. And that letter, Guy pressed toward Lee's ear with a stage whisper. That Kakashi, while I was off fighting to save the lives of the passengers during that thing on the Tobishakimaru, he was shamelessly carrying on with an enemy ninja woman. So what everyone in the village is saying is true then, Lee whispered, equally dramatic. I won't grow up to be an adult like that, Master Guy. You too. Kakashi folded the letter and slipped it into his pocket. How many times do I have to tell you it's not like that with me and Kaio? But Guy and Lee ignored Kakashi and began doing single-leg squats. I often said, my student. Guy continued easy squats with his one leg. Even if a man like that ends up Hokage, I still intend to properly advise him. All right. Today is 5,000 single-leg squats. Yes, Master Guy. Kakashi stood up and quietly departed the scene. The next time he tried to read the letter was in the storefront of the tea shop. He ordered a cup of matcha, and while he waited for it to be brought to him, he opened up the letter from Kaio. Dear 6th Hokage, I hope you have been well. Master Kakashi. Shifting his gaze, he saw Shikamaru and Choji make their way leisurely into the tea shop. What are you reading, Master Kakashi? Choji asked, crunching away on potato chips. Oh. Is it maybe a letter from that woman you abused your authority to make yours? Make mine? Hold on a minute. Kakashi hurriedly stuffed the letter into his pocket. You still seem to have the wrong impression. That was my first job as Hokage. I definitely would not abuse my authority. Come on, don't go saying that, Choji. Shikamaru jumped in. I mean, Master Kakashi's long past 30. No big deal if he has a woman or two. No, I'm telling you, that Kaio person was pretty, after all. Choji. Older, but still. And then the two of them stared at Kakashi, grinning. Kakashi paid for the tea without drinking it and put the shop behind him. As he walked along the village's main street, villagers came one after another to say hello. Although once he had passed them, he could hear giggles and snickers. This is weird, Kakashi thought, thoroughly self-conscious. How does everyone know I got a letter from Kaio? He walked a little farther and turned off onto a path with no on it. He then looked both ways to confirm that there was no sign of his ridiculously persistent comrades, and yanked the letter from his pocket once more. Dear 6th Hokage, I hope you have been well. Take a look at that. Grinning, indecent. Turning in the direction of the voices, Kakashi spied the faces of Sakura, and Hinata peering out from above a wooden wall. Oh! Kakashi was startled out of his wits, and the letter danced up from his hand. Why you, where did you come from? Look, see how flustered he is, Hino said. It's because he has impure thoughts that he's getting that flustered. Sakura turned her eyes on him as though she were looking at something filthy. So the rumors are true then? Hinata said. Kaio's chasing Master Kakashi in exchange for him giving her the post of Master at Ozuki Castle? Oh, of course the rumors are not true. Kakashi yelled. Who on earth is saying such baseless things? But the girls weren't listening anymore. Whispering among themselves, they chirped and tweeted like 3 sparrows. What? Really? Or I can't believe it, or that far already? Kakashi started walking again. Apparently, the only place he could maintain his privacy was the office of the Hokage. He returned to the main street and trudging along, came up against a bit of a crowd. On the other side, someone was calling out in a high-pitched voice. The people gathered there burst out laughing. I honestly saw it with these very eyes. In the center of the circle was Naruto. Master Kakashi writing a letter, ripping it up, writing a letter, ripping it up. I mean, that was totally a love letter. For real. Kakashi stared. To know if he's gonna be okay as the 6th Hokage like that. Naruto raised his carefree voice. Nah, I won't say he's in love, but, it's a serious illness, The other day, right, he picked a flower, okay? And he did the whole loves me not thing, pulling the petals off one by one. So it's you. Eyes glittering, Kakashi pulled himself to stand tall behind Naruto. You're the one telling tales about a bunch of half-truths? Huh? When he turned around, a distinct shade of fear rose up in Naruto's eyes. And Master Kakashi. Wait, I can, Kunk. What on earth is this about? What are you doing? Kakashi brandished the fist he had dropped on Naruto's head. I might not be so forgiving this time. It's just, with teary eyes, Naruto rubbed his head as he made his appeal. I'm the only one left out here. Everyone else got to fight at Ozuki Castle. And I was just hanging out in the village when you were almost dying, Master Kakashi. Naruto rubbed his eyes. Sorry for hitting you, Kakashi said. And we hid it from because you have to take care of this village for me if anything happens to me. I know that much. Jeez. This guy seriously can't take a joke. Shikamaru and Choji came over from the other side of the street. This idiot's telling all his tall tales, but no one seriously believed any of it. Choji nodded. That's right. From the opposite side of the street, Sakura and Ino came along with Hinata in tow. We were all just teasing you a bit, Master Kakashi. Naruto, are you okay? Hinata offered Naruto a hand and helped him to his feet. Hitting him over a thing like this. Master Kakashi, that's terrible. What? But Naruto's hurt, Shikamaru said. You're the Hokage, you should know that much at least. Well, it's all fine and good to say that. I think you should apologize, Master Kakashi, Sakura and Ino said, sharply. It was just an innocent prank, after all. Fine. Kakashi finally shouted. I get it. I understand. What do I have to do for you to forgive me? Naruto and Shikamaru exchanged looks and grinned. Damn it. The instant he saw that, Kakashi knew that he had fallen into a trap. These kids got me. To heal my damaged heart, Naruto said, the only thing that works is ramen. Everyone there held their breath and waited for Kakashi's response. Fine. Kakashi could only throw up both hands and assume a posture of surrender. How about we all go grab some ramen right now? Yay! A cheer rose up. All right. Told you it'd work. Honestly. In his heart, Kakashi shook his head. Abruptly, the ridiculousness of it hit him. I'm the Hokage now, but I still do the same things. Every day, I eat, I sleep, I worry about stupid things. My job is to make sure these kids have as many days as they can where they can be idiots like this. Right, that's it, isn't it, Obito? And then he chased after his students gleefully headed to one of their favorite pastimes, the sun pouring down on them all. Somewhere, a nightingale warbled. Dear Sixth Hokage, I hope you have been well. I am always pressed with the everyday business of work, but as the season shifts each day to spring, I carry out my duties with a peaceful heart. Spring had indeed arrived. End of Kakashi Hiden, Lightning in the Icy Sky. Thank you for listening. Remember to like and subscribe for lots more.